All right, today we'll talk about exogenic processes and how it all starts. So now, we said earlier, for these processes to kickstart, first of all, you need to have magma which have solidified on the Earth's surface. So a mountain such as this one must have been made up of magma which erupted from the Earth interior and solidified on the Earth's surface. So there's a need for solidification to take place. So it basically means when an eruption takes place, that lava flow which is coming out, eventually it will come on the Earth's surface and it will solidify. So this is lava which would really solidify at a very high temperature. So when lava solidify, it forms rocks, and comes with the rocks are different minerals that are aggregated together. So you have this kind of a mountain made up of aggregates of minerals, what we call rocks. So what will happen, the hydrological cycle, which is part of the exogenic process, will, for example, start breaking down this mountain through a process called weathering. So for this to happen, for example, you have an environment whereby temperature changes from time to time. For example, when temperature reaches freezing point, water would fill up the cracks, right? Water that has filled up the cracks would solidify, become ice. And we know when water solidifies, it expands. So if there's water between the cracks and it freezes, it would force the frozen water to expand. And if it expands, it would break, it would crack the rocks. Then later on, when temperature increases, the ice would melt, the small stratas that have been cracked would start falling off, and then later on it would rain again, water would fill up more cracks, temperature drop below freezing point, water between the cracks would freeze and expand and continue breaking down the mountain. So eventually you have these small stratas that are falling down to the base of the mountain, right? Not soil yet, but basically small rock stratas. You find a lot of those next to mountain base. These rock stratas would start falling down because of gravity, of course. But then later on, they would be eroded away. As they continue with the erosion process, they are being transported. They would continue to break down even in much more smaller stratas. So eventually, they become, for example, sediments. So that process produce sediments, eventually producing basically what we have as soil. Then when they are eroded, they will be transported. Agent of erosion and transportation are largely wind, water, and ice. So eventually they will be transported, and for example, in valleys, in gullies, and the likes. They will not be transported forever. The energy that is powering the transportation process would eventually run out, and then deposition starts taking place, right? For example, in basins, the elevation becomes, the landscape become leveled such that water would no longer be able to flow. So water would become stagnant. When water becomes stagnant and it's carrying sediments, the sediments start getting deposited there as well. So it's the same, for example, at the sea. In most cases, with a few exemptions, rivers empty at sea. When the rivers empty at sea, uh, the rivers, they bring along sand. So eventually that sediment would start getting transported there. So, and that transportation process create new landforms. For example, sandbars, alluvial fens, deltas, floodplains, or glacier tills. So all those are exogenic processes that are taking place. Now, eventually, when deposition continue taking place, remember that's what I said. These materials continue piling up on each other, and then they start getting cemented together in order to convert back to sedimentary rocks. So that is basically what happens. So it basically means you have this geological cycle that is at work all the time. Okay, so we'll end here. We'll continue in the next recording.